This is RoundHouse, featuring Grandmaster Al DeCoscos and Grandmaster Ron Van Cliff. Talking about the things that Grandmasters just don't want to talk about and giving you a seat at the table. This is your host, Sean Harflinger, and we will see you every Friday, every week. RoundHouse. Take the hit. Adult discretion advised. There is adult content in the following podcast. Please be advised. This is RoundHouse with your three hosts, Grandmaster Al DeCoscos, Grandmaster Ron Van Cleef, and myself, Sifu Sean Harflinger, and today it's episode 3, and what we are talking about is a question that comes up a lot. What does it mean to be a master? And it makes sense that we speak to two men that are masters themselves. And so we're going to talk about what is a master? Who was your first master? How old were you when you became a master? Yada, yada, yada. But today is a master class on what it is to be a master. So let's get started. Senior Grandmaster Al DeCoscos has been in the martial arts for 70 years. He's owned hundreds of schools. He's got thousands of black belts beneath him, and he has been a Grandmaster for decades. And so I'm going to hand it over to him. Grandmaster Al DeCoscos, question number 1. What is a master?
That's a good one. Good one, Sean. That's a complicated thing to answer, but yet simple in a way, because when you say what is a master, coming from a different point of view, even the most meager type of person you meet out on the street is a master of something, and it doesn't matter, because I've met a lot of people that I may be a master in the martial arts, but there's no way I'm going to compete with this person because he's a master chef in a restaurant. So masters is a difficult thing to say. You'd really have to say a master of what, So when you say, well, okay, this guy's a master of the martial arts, that's another story. But you just put outside the whole word master. If you get to be religious or anything, people would say there's only one master, the one up above there. So, the idea is just that even when you talk about masters or grandmasters, you begin to be selective. Well, this guy's a master mechanic. Okay, I understand that. This guy's a master chef. So having a title after the word master, it kind of just puts you right down into what this guy is focused in, because this guy could be a real good artist, but he's not a master unless you say he's a master in oil painting, but he's really not in the working with charcoal. So working with the master, what are you asking me? Because when a person says, hey master, I'm kind of wondering, what is he talking about? Because there are a couple of things I like to do. I like to do model planes, and I kind of master that, So is he talking about me mastering my model plane making, or is he talking about me mastering my martial arts? Okay, so now you kind of gave a little bit of clarification on that one, because as I say, masters can be, even the most humble person out on the street, like a homeless person, probably before he became became homeless. And mastered the homelessness, but before that, he could have been a vice president, and he was a master in management or something this way. What is okay? So just want to have that there. So don't look at it that we master everything. Even those that are listening, you got to be a master of something. Maybe turning on the computer, mastering that. Now, when we say about a master, let's just say that I think all masters, for one, they're taking it from a different point of view. We don't stop. We constantly learn about everything, because the minute you say the word master, in my opinion, it's like you have a mental block that says, I'm a master. You go to beep and you stop. But if you say, I am a student or a practitioner of the martial arts and I'm still trying to do this, I could say that, well, I am a master in training, where I'm training myself to get better, to be to master this one here. Because masters, go into a lot of things. The leadership, you get it as an example, being humble, having integrity, having humbleness, respectfulness, and integrity. There's a lot of things that make up a good person that is in a learning mode. And I think if someone calls you a master, in his opinion, you are a master, but keeping it's like a humble attitude, showing a lot of humility, that's more respectful than you're going to run calling yourself, I'm a master. This is why I don't really like to go around, saying that I'm a master. If people give me the acknowledgement that, grandmaster or anything, this is the way they see me. But as far as I see myself, I am still a student of the martial arts and will always be a student of martial arts to constantly move forward.
Me too.
And yeah, that's right. And if you take that, look, for instance, take a look at Ron. I mean, Jesus, man, at 80 or 81 years old, I mean, he may have stopped competing in the kick and punch, but he's still learning. And look at this, man. He's already competing in jiu-jitsu and everything else. Most guys at 80 years old, have already stopped competing by the time they are already around 60 or 40 years old. So I mean, and Ron is such I think he's one of the most humble person that I've ever known, and I'm really glad to be in his company now. That is what you call a person that has a master attitude mindset. But he's not, and humbly, he don't consider himself to be that, but he's considering himself to be a martial artist that is like, okay, let's go right back into it. He's like all of us. We are masters in training. We're training to become that ultimate thing. And that mastership is always going to be elusive. It's going to be like chasing a rainbow with different colors, So you're never really going to get there. But if somebody gives you the title, master, master or grandmaster, Ron Van Clief, that's an honor for somebody else to recognize you as that, instead of you recognizing yourself, because you look at yourself every day in the mirror, and there's points that you say, oh well, man, I don't master this, I'm still learning. So anyway, that's pretty much my attitude about a mastership, because if it's always learning, you got to be able to there's why, when, how, what you're learning. And if you're going to be able to achieve that as being somebody that wants to master something, what say, Ron?
Well, Sifu, I've always looked up to you as an innovator, as a pioneer, an educator, a humanitarian. So you've always been on my A list. You remind me of my first master. His name was Moses Powell. He had the same type of philosophy as you in regards to reality training, respect, loyalty, integrity, all of those great qualities that are human qualities. I've never considered myself a master. I think like I'm one
That's
of the,
why you are.
I'm one of the shittiest brown belts at the Gracie School, I think. I never thought I was good, Al. Truthfully. I knew how to fight, I knew technique and whatnot, but I never considered myself a master like Peter Urban, like Moses Powell, like Ronald Duncan, like Ed Parker. I never considered myself on that level. I'm not even a pimple on their butts, When I was like 20 years old, Peter Urban told me, you have to write a book. You can't master anything until you write a book. So I started studying in 1957, And I write my first book in 1980. It was called The Manual of the Martial Arts. It was an accumulative, just a collection of different martial arts. And what I thought were the major systems that were in existence at that time. He saw my book, he said, "This is shit." Write it better. So I've written like 11 books, and it takes 10,000 hours to master something, you know?
Yeah.
I still haven't mastered. I've mastered surviving and living and maintaining myself, because I realize that if I don't maintain myself, how good am I going to be for my family, my friends, and the world?
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Like Al and I, we're ancient in the martial arts. We're like Peter Urban and Moses Powell and Ed Parker were in their day. We are those people to the society that exists now. So that master thing has always, I've never introduced myself as a grand master or as a master. I just say my name, you know? And Sensei Urban was one of the most educated and prolific writers in martial arts. He brought Goju from Japan, from Yamaguchi. He was the first non-white to receive a 5th-degree black belt from Yamaguchi from the real days, where they knocked out his teeth in class and this and that. He never considered himself a master either. He told me when he made me a red belt, and it was a heart attack time. It took me a year to put the red belt on. He threatened to throw me out of his school if I didn't put on the belt. So I never believed in titles. Sensei was enough for me, you know? Sifu is enough for me. And as I get older, I think I want to be a coach. I think I want to graduate to coach.
You know,
that was everything.
Right.
It doesn't have to be specifically this martial arts, that martial arts, but coach like a life coach.
Absolutely.
the trend seems to be among masters and leaders is humility. That seems to be one of the really cool trends that you find in true masters. Now, I'm going to say this. I'm going to go out there and just say it. A true master is somebody who walks with humility, because like what you guys just said, the journey is never over, right? It's never over. You're always learning stuff. I can give you 3 examples of how reality in itself has changed in the last 40 years. Remember, it used to be little atoms and protons, and then it was string theory. You know what I mean? Reality in itself is changing around us. Now they think it's a conscious construct with all of us, and it just appears as we all pay attention to it. You know what I mean? It just renders and shit like a computer program. So I think you guys are absolutely right in your definition that a master, what is a master? A master is just a coach. It's somebody who's here to show you and give you options and raise you up like the tides of the ocean. Yeah. So you can't really be a good raiser of ships if you don't have humility. Yeah, because that's what an act of service is. And if you're not
a good student.
Yeah, no, humility right there. You wouldn't even have learned how to become a master if you didn't sit down and observe the master. Right?
Absolutely.
You see it play out so many times, and I don't want to take over the show, but we see this play out so many times with students that don't get the validation that they want, and they turn evil. You know what I mean? And so, excuse me. Yeah, because their ego isn't fed. But with a person who's humble, they're still in service of another. And it seems like those people become the true definition of masters. And so I want to give you guys both the credit for mastering that, the simple task of humility and bringing those services to other people.
I know enough to know that I don't know anything yet.
Right? Socrates. That's Socrates right there. That quote first came into my life when I was a young boy, and I've held on to it like a freaking baby blanket, man, because you don't know shit. Even when you said earlier, you were talking about mastering things. There's like, what, 1,000 different types of martial arts? Yeah, so how are you going to do that? How are you going to learn? How are you going to, so yeah, you'll never, ever be a master. You cannot patent a punch.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's just too many variations. So, Grandmaster Al DeCoscos has defined what he thought was a master was pretty much, hey, I'm not a master, just, learn things and be good at it. And then it was mirrored by Grandmaster Ron Van Cleef. So I guess now the important question, and we're going to give it to Al, Mr. DeCoscos, the important question is, well, who was the first master that put you on that path? Because somebody clearly gave you inspiration that this is what a master should be. I hope I'm getting it right. I hope you're not going to tell me, no, my master was a freak. So who was your first master?
The first master I had was a belt from my dad.
Oh, it was a freak.
Another one. He was the master of our house. Yeah. That's a different thing to it, because we're talking about the master of the house. But when you talk about the master of the martial arts that I've had, I would say that I've had several, but they never, at that particular time, none of them had ever called themselves a master. They were just teachers, or senseis, like or seafood, like when I started with Charlie fought with Mike Chong, he was just seafood, that's all he was called, or like when I had Rubberman Hagami, in judo, jiu-jitsu, we just call them sensei. It wasn't nobody called masters. Masters didn't come inside until, maybe in the 60s or 70s, we just, yeah.
The
so
70s.
We just took it
Sorry, so it started in the 70s.
Here in the United States, Yes, sir. Yeah. So it's kind of weird, he just took it for what it was. I don't know how it was on the mainland, but I know here on Hawaii, where you had a really heavy influence of mixed cultures with the Chinese, the Filipinos, the Japanese, and Koreans. I don't know, everybody called them according to what they were practicing within their own culture. So, master in our house, because my family was really heavy Christians, we always said that, the only master that we have is the Lord God, that was that, and so it was like, God, family, and then everything else came afterwards. So we took it in that sort of like hierarchy, on that. As far as masters, I think everybody that I've met, we take it like I said at the very beginning, was a master of something, because I learned so much things. One of the guys that I really like was a guy by the name of Mr. Kelly, that when I was over at Palama Saramin as a 11, 12-year-old, he worked in a wood shop, and he was really a good craftsman and showed us all kinds of things on how to make pots and how to make out of wood, how to make furniture and everything. This guy was a master craftsman, and I looked at him as being so much of a craftsman when it came to doing things that way. But when it came to other things, he was such a dud, but that one there nobody could touch. So this is why the influence I have when I look back on things, I said, everybody is a master of something. If you're a good friend of them, you will try to discover what he's really good at, and master. And that's the person that, you want to stick around. I always say that, if you want to be a millionaire, then find yourself 3 millionaires and you're going to be the fourth. And if you want to be an idiot, find yourself 3 idiots and then you're going to be the fourth idiot. So you see what I mean? So the point is just that if you want to be a master of something that this guy is really, really good at, and say he's good into a certain martial arts, because I know there's a lot of good martial artists that are really good when it comes to, say, pin-up techniques or grappling techniques. That's it. They're masters. But when it comes into humility or punch and kick, they're totally blank. So, you find those masters. This is why a lot of times you find students have many different instructors in certain martial arts because they want to try to accomplish whatever that certain master is, because there are masters that are really, really good when it comes to herbs and medicines and things this way. They can kill you with that, or just the medicines and the way they do it. But when it comes to punching and kicking, it's a totally different story. So if you find somebody now that is a good kicker and puncher, then you yourself have mastered that part, and then master the part of the herbalist, and then combine it, and then you become your own master in what you do, and they don't have that. So
Yeah.
it's
You dip your foot in poison, kick somebody, get the poison foot.
there you go. Yeah.
All right, so your first master was a woodworker. Is that what you settled on? And I can see that how it affected your life, because you still have a massive woodworking tool collection. You have this huge thing. I know when I was remodeling my house, you came and helped me with some of my projects. I learned a lot from you. So you were able to be a conduit for the things that you learned early on in life and what you're passionate about now, and came over to my place and helped me do the flooring. I don't know if you remember that, but we were doing flooring and selling my house out in Eva. But clearly that stuck with you, and that was your influence. I was surprised that your first martial art grandmasters were different names than is provided in our immediate lineage. And maybe later on you can give us some insight to those grandmasters you've worked with locally, like Sid Asuncion and Imperato. It'd be interesting what stories you have with them. But speaking of grandmasters, Ron Van Cleef, who was your first master, and I guess how did he influence you?
My first master was Commander Vaughn. I belonged to an organization called the Blue Jackets when I was a kid. It's like the Boy Scouts, but more Navy kind of oriented. His name was Commander Vaughn. I never knew his first name, but saluting, manual of arms, all that stuff, marching, formations, real fitness. He was my first mentor and teacher, because at 10, when you see someone who's like a middle-aged guy get down and do push-ups and do all kinds of strength things, and say, wow, he opened my eyes to one's ability on the physical level, and
well, bless him.
Unlimited. When I was 15, I was already doing 100 push-ups at a time, 3 or 4 times a day. I was one of those. There was a point where I was doing 1,000 push-ups a day.
You were like the Energizer Bunny. Okay, so here's my question. In your mind, did you rep them out in sets of 10 to make it easier? Like
No.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
100.
No, I mean, I know you were doing them all at one time, but in your mind, to help you get
I
through
count
it,
to 100. I
you
just
just
count
go
to
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and just bang them out.
Sure.
Crazy.
But he was my first mentor. And then I had another master, you could say. His name was Gabby Hayes. You know who Gabby Hayes was?
Who's Gabby
He was
Hayes?
a sidekick to Roy Rogers.
He was Roy Rogers' sidekick. Roy
Sidekick.
Rogers was a cowboy.
Yes.
Yeah.
the
Tell me
steam
about
cowboy.
Gabby Hayes.
Well, when I was a kid, we went away to summer camp, and it was Victor Ganucci's and Gabby Hayes's camp, where we learned how to ride horses, shoe horses, riding tricks, doing everything you would do on a horse range. We would take all these ghetto kids, it cost nothing, 3 meals a day, but they worked the shit out of you
Right.
the whole time you were there. I mean, I was shoeing horses when I was 12.
Right. So you mentioned horse tricks. What
Yeah.
type of horse tricks were you doing?
Jumps.
Jumping, you're on the horse, jumping
Yes.
over stuff.
Yes.
Right on. That's good fun. I grew up on a ranch and we had horses, and horses are like another type of tractor that you can become best friends with. Right.
And he was like a grumpy old guy, you know, loved his alcohol, but the guy was born in the 1800s, you know?
It was born in the 1800s.
Can you imagine? He was around when there were Indians. They were on the plains. They were fucking
There's there were Indians out there.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh, I get it. I
It's
get
kind
it.
of like, but he was a very tough guy. Very tough.
We had to be. He was born in the 1800s.
Chewed tobacco, smoked cigarettes, smoked cigars, drank all the time, had his flask with him, that kind of thing. But he could ride. He could do anything. Anything.
You know, I think it's so amazing to listen to you guys talk, because I think Gen X might be the last generation that remembers all those stories. Because when I was a kid, it seemed like the 1800s was just yesterday. You know what I mean? We were so close to it. It seemed like, you know, when people talk about Indians and cowboys, you're like, yeah, that was just 50 something years ago. Right? I think today the culture and stuff is so disconnected. That's why these conversations are so important, because you're talking about cowboy and Indian camp, which was a thing, right? And everybody was involved. You had all these programs. You mentioned flask. I remember when a flask was a thing a man had in his possession. It was like a pocket watch. It was like a wallet. It was like a knife. You had a flask. Everybody had a flask. And one of the coolest presents you would give another man would be a flask. Here's a flask. You know, today, I don't know what people would think about that, but it was completely honorable, just like a weapon, right? Back in the day, a regular thing that you would give another man was a weapon. Here's a knife. I found this really badass knife. And a flask. Don't get drunk and stab me, but hey, right? But things have changed today. Right? You wouldn't even, you know, I still give those gifts away. I guess I'm kind of a weird romantic, but I still give out flask and knives, weird stuff like hammers. I'm a weirdo. I give things that have purpose as presents. But anyway, I love listening to this because you're at a cowboy and Indian camp with Gabby Hayes, and I can just see it in my mind.
Roy Rogers, man.
Yeah, was Roy Rogers there?
Rogers. I actually met him with Gabby Hayes at like a parade that they had in Macy's on 34th Street when I was a little boy.
Right.
He was on his Palomino horse, man.
So you know who did it? Do you know who did it for me? That is probably equal to that. It was the Lone Ranger. So I remember watching the black and white Lone Ranger shows as a young boy, and I just thought, and I'd get on our horse on the ranch and I'd run around all over the place, you know, and save invisible people. It was amazing. That and Indiana Jones were my first heroes, but what a cool and exciting time. So your master, or one of your first masters, is in this military organization. You said it was called the Blue Jackets?
The Blue Jackets.
The Blue Jackets.
Commander Vaughn.
Right on, Commander Vaughn. And I can see how that would be amazing to see a middle-aged man do all this cool, amazing shit, because you're a kid.
And 6'5".
6'5".
Big guy.
Damn, big guy. Racking out push-ups by the hundreds and stuff. Yeah, that's a good thing to see as a young boy. Because you're right.
Good example.
Yeah, that's a good thing for then you see the longevity of life in front of you. Right? You don't see the old guy dying, right?
My other mentor, he was a circus strongman. His name was Dan Lurie. He was the SEAL Test circus strongman. One of those guys that did 14,000 push-ups, 28,000 sit-ups.
Whoa.
One of those guys, a 5'6", 225-pound Mr. America, not
Right.
just contender, winner. He was one of my mentors when I was a kid also. And I met him through another bodybuilder. His name was Kenny Hall. He was the first African American to compete in the Mr. America in 1953.
Man, it's so interesting to listen.
I was 10 years old when I saw pictures of this guy. That's how I got abs and shit when I was 15. These people molded me. They worked me to death. I saw John Wayne in Santa Iwo Jima. I knew I was going to be a Marine. So from 10 to 17, I worked out just to be able to be going into the Marine Corps. That was it.
Can
My
you
whole
see?
life was just that.
Can you see the differences in mentors and idols between your era and then the era today? We have a problem with young men and women in the world today with physical fitness, and I think it's because we don't prop up enough people like what you gentlemen saw or like what I saw. Yeah, nowadays you don't see. Who's tracking Mr. America today, or the IFBB, or the what is the other one? Weeder, Mr. Universe, what Arnold and all those guys were doing. Yeah, Mr. Olympia. Who's tracking that stuff today? When I was a kid, it was huge. We all knew who those guys were. Yeah, it was huge. I remember it was just like a sport. Everybody knew who Arnold Schwarzenegger was, and Lee Haney, and Columbo, and all those guys. We all knew. Yeah, Sean Ray. We knew who all these guys were.
Frank Zane, all those guys.
Yeah. So I think maybe one of the things we're lacking today is we don't have those idols, those guys that are out there being those mentors and people to look up to, right? Because who are our pop culture idols today? Can we name anybody? Can you?
Taylor Swift.
Fighters? Yeah, I guess Taylor Swift. Yeah, I think that's the thing that we're missing. That's why conversations like this at the RoundHouse are so important. You're talking to two silent generation masters in Kung Fu who have had a lifetime of experience of physicality and teaching and mastering different things. And it's important to hear that. Yeah, to hear what spawned it off, because I know enough about Ron to listen to these stories and go, oh, so that's why you became a gymnast. Because of that dude, the circus guy, probably, right? Oh, I see. And oh, the billion push-ups. And oh, I get it. It's because of the people you met. Al DeCoscos, he's been a woodworker. He's got this elaborate woodworking thing. It's like right on the other side of the wall from him in his house, right? He's got this whole elaborate thing that he made. Yeah, and he's amazing at it. And so right there, you can see how positive influences not only influenced you positively, but for your entire lives.
For your entire life.
Yeah, because here you are at 81. You're working on the mats, still grappling a couple times a week. Al's still working on stuff. You guys are still mastering and tinkering with stuff. And so right there is a mindset. We might want to put a pin in that and say, hey, a master mindset looks like this.
It's all mindset.
Yeah, don't sit down. Never sit down.
Absolutely.
Once you sit down, you get comfortable. Right? So
too comfortable.
Right? You do. Well, it's good to relax, but still, yeah, if you're trying to maintain something, master something, work towards a goal, sometimes the biggest thing
burn out or rust out.
Sorry?
Burn out or rust out. That's all there is.
Burn out or rest out. There you go. Where did you hear that? That's amazing.
That's a Peter Urban statement from 1959.
Peter Irving, 1959. Peter Irvin. Urban, sorry.
E-R-B-A-N. The founder of the
Bourbon. Peter Urban, 1950 what?
1959.
1959. He said, burn out or rest out.
Or rust out.
Rust out. Oh, man, I can't hear worse shit this morning because the rest out part made sense. I was like, yeah, you could sit on your ass until you die. You could rest out. Or you could work so hard that you burn out. Yes. Okay, so 81.
He would say things like, life is, let's go, keep going, there is nothing else. And next. That was his daily affirmation for me.
have you noticed that your masters and the people that have mastered things and have influenced you, you said earlier the guy was a prophetic writer. Do you find that the people that you've run across are like that? They're never, their minds are going, they're inspiring, they're validating, they're writing all these affirmations. Because that's one thing I've ran across is that, especially martial arts guys, full of quotes and little motivational sayings and little things. You can tell that we all must run around and say these things to ourselves. Don't give up. 10 more punches. Yeah, and so I think it's an amazing trait. So, how old were you, Al de Cascos, when you were first anointed a master in the martial arts?
When I was first anointed, you mean someone calling me a master?
No, I'm messing. Okay, let me rephrase the question. When did you officially get promoted to, what is it? Is it 8th degree? What is the official black belt rank for a master?
Well, it depends on the style. You know, every style has their own. You know, mine, when I was going from 8th to 9th, there was a 20-year time period between that, and I didn't get to be called a Grand Master until I think it was somewhere, if I can recall, could be around 2000 and maybe 2007, maybe.
Really? How old were you when that happened?
Well, if you go 10 years younger, I mean, you know, that was in my, could be in my 66 to 67 years old. Maybe.
Wow. You know, I've been with you quarter of a century. And for some reason, I don't even remember any kind of formality of that happening. It's Sifu. It's been Sifu forever. And then, I think we were out in public and somebody said, "Oh, yes, Grandmaster." And I was like, "Oh, yes. Of course, I just assumed it. Of course he's a Grandmaster, this guy." What the hell? Yeah, but, So, 2007, 16 years ago, offhand, right? 16 years.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I don't even keep track of the kind of things when you get promoted or anything. It's not something that, you know, I mean, you know, I always say that you don't wear your belt on your head. You know, it's only used to hold up your pants. Yeah. So, you know, when you think about it, you know, the knowledge of Grandmastership or that title is here and not on your waist. Yeah. So when that was given to me, that was done in Las Vegas and Emperado, and the Kajukenbo clan promoted me to that. It was anticipated, but it took a little while, 20 years waiting. But you know, I didn't even care about it, you know, because it didn't matter. And there were people that were I knew that were already in 9th degree, you know, while I was 8th degree. But they were 9th degree. They were 9th degree. I was 8th degree. But in the early part, in the 60s, you know, I was already or in the early 1970s, I was already a 5th degree, and it was still a white belt, you know. So it just look at that, and I said, well, that's okay, you know. It's on within their own system. They acknowledge him as master or grandmaster. It's fine, you know. The objective was just that if they was teaching students and students was learning something, yeah, then they must have done something right. Otherwise, you know, getting a title for master and not doing anything, then you're not progressing the lineage or the legacy that you profess to be. So, you know, I think that any person who holds the title of Grandmaster has got to have something as a base, a solid foundation of people under them that they can say, well, these are my children, these are my future leaders. And as an example, you showing them on how to become like you, but taking more of a humility and humble approach, showing a lot of respect. I think that is what the most thing. I respect a person, and respect to me is a master. I respect a person who has shown somebody on how to live right and not live wrong. And living right comes with integrity, humility, respect for others, and all of those attributes in virtue that would make a person considered to be like a master, a master of person or master of life. I would say that anybody that is a really good life coach, that's more important than anything else, is learning how to live to be a good human being.
You know, you hit on something that maybe most people don't realize, is that when you're teaching martial arts, you sure do spend a lot of time talking about life, right? So when I would be up in front of class, you'd warm everybody up and you'd talk about these techniques, but then something would come up, some example, and you would have to have your Sifu lecture and be like, oh, well, you know, we don't always hit people with this kind of force and yada, 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 or we don't call the people this because you're dealing with kids and students and men and women and stuff. And so within the confines of your kun or your dojo, you have these rules, right? And so as an instructor, you have all these teachable moments. And so you find yourself talking a lot about life, even before and after class. You guys, okay, so I would have students come to me with their problems in life. I remember I came to you, Al, when I was very young. I think I was maybe 24, and I came to you and I was seeking help about balance in my life. And we're going to go into a time capsule story here, but I was dealing with a brand new realization that PTSD was stronger within me than I had thought. And I was looking for balance, and I was very upset and emotional. And I remember coming to you and saying, hey, I need to talk to you after class. And you're like, yeah, sure, anytime. And so I came into your office and I explained to you my struggles, right? This is what's going on. And this is what I need. And this is why I'm here in your class, because I'm hoping the physicality of it all, you know what I mean, will help me out, right? It's helped me in the past. And you bring out a piece of white paper and you drew a circle on it, and then you drew it into a pie, and it was a misshapen pie. One piece of the pie was massive, it was bigger than all the other pieces, and you showed me, and I needed this. I didn't know I needed this, but I needed this visual diagram, you know what I mean, to compartmentalize my life. And you said, this big piece here, Sean, is your anger. Yeah, it's what you're focusing on. You're putting everything into this big piece of the pie. But these other pieces of the pie are important as well. And so you're out of balance. That's what your problem is that you haven't found balance. And what I would ask you to do is this pie here, you know, what do you think that is? And I'm like, that's my family. And you're like, okay, well, make that piece bigger. You know, and what is this piece? And I was like, that's my, you know, job. And this is my, you know, martial arts. And you said, make these pieces bigger so that they can encompass more of your pie. Because right now you're so caught up in your mental health and your PTSD and the reaction to it that you're overshadowing and you're looking over the other things. And so for me, that was a big game changer. That was a map changer in my life, to be able to come to my martial arts instructor asking for help, and then for you to have a master moment and give me a good answer, a plan that helped me. And I talk about this a lot. You're probably sick of this story, but this is why acts of service are so important. And you never know what little conversation changes a man's life, because what I did is I went and sought therapy. The next day I went and got a therapist, and I started working on my PTSD. Before that, I was punching and drinking through my PTSD. You know what I mean? I was doing what the Marines taught me to do. Punch through it, fucker, go right through it. Right? But that wasn't working for me. I was a young father.
It doesn't work for anybody, man.
Right, it doesn't. The bottom of a bottle doesn't help you do shit. Right? I learned that the hard way. But anyway, that was a master moment for me. And so I want to say once again, thank you very much, Al, for doing that. It was a lifesaver. You saved my life. I almost got off topic there, but here we are. We've gone through and asked, what is a master? I think you've done a wonderful job, gentlemen, of explaining what a master is. You've talked about the masters of your life and the people that you've met. You have discussed briefly about how old you were when you became a master, and that tangented and segued right into what we were talking about. But I need to get back on track. Ron Van Cleef, when did you first get recognized presented with the title of master? When was that handed down to you?
1971 by Grandmaster Peter Urban. He promoted me to the level of 9th degree in Aikijitsu. And it was way overkill for me. I felt vastly undeserving, Didn't think I would ever get to that level, truthfully, in anything in my life. So when he did that, and he then forced me to create my own system and start writing books about my system and the martial arts in general. And 1971, and I was only 32 years old. I didn't know shit from Shinola, man. I just gotten out of the police academy in New York.
In 1971, yes, okay. For those of you who haven't listened to the prior episodes, there is this wonderful story about Ron Van Cleef as a transit cop in New York City, and he had an afro. I have to keep on bringing that up because I think it's such an amazing visual, right? Because I visualize you like over your right shoulder. Was that the size of the afro?
Oh, yes.
Okay, for those of you that are listening,
put a stocking cap on to make it fit under my uniform hat.
Okay, did it look like?
When I took the stocking cap out, it would go
joing and bounce out. Oh, that's amazing.
Oh.
I can't help but think of that every time. Like, wait, okay, I have this question. Did the New York City police officer uniform have bell bottoms in 1971? No, but it would have tied in the afro perfectly.
My precinct commander, his name was Lieutenant Lou Alcindor. He filed charges on me for my afro. He filed charges on me for an Irish pennant on my shirt. He was a very, very rigid man.
Rigid? You said you had an Irish pin on your shirt. What was that about?
No, an Irish pennant.
Pennant. Oh, sorry.
Which is a little piece of material hanging off your shirt.
Oh, sorry.
Like a string.
Yeah, okay. Oh, because your uniform was unkept.
He was a ball buster. He was Lou Alcindor, the basketball player's father.
I think you'd mentioned that.
Yeah.
Okay, so
he was a very difficult man.
You get promoted to 9th degree. Is 9th degree, is that internationally recognized as maybe, you said earlier, like, it depends on your system, but I don't think I've ran into a system where somebody's...
I think it all depends on your system.
Is there grandmaster, is there masters at 2nd degree?
No. I think that's what
grandmaster
level starts at about, I think, 7.
That's where I'm digging. That's what I'm fishing for. Is there a minimum where like people are like, shut up? No, you're not a master. You're a 3rd degree black belt. Get the hell out of here. You're 3rd degree. Come back when you're a 5th, 6th, 7th, or whatever. So 7th degree.
I never considered myself a grandmaster. So.
I know. Well, here's the thing. If we want to get,
I don't know. I still don't know anything.
If we want to get into the historical part of it, I don't think anybody really cared until martial arts started to get recognized around the world, right? Yes. Originally, I don't think anybody cared. It was student and teacher.
A brown belt was a god when I started martial arts.
Was a what?
A god.
A guard.
No, G-O-D.
A god. Oh, a brown belt was a god.
A brown belt was from Mount Olympus. He was a god when I started martial arts in the 50s.
And now that's changed.
Now,
except for certain schools,
everybody's a grandmaster.
Everybody's a grandmaster. Yeah. That's why I keep on fishing for those answers, because today's episode is actually about that. What we want to do is we want to define what a grandmaster is. We want to show the audience and the listener what an example of a grandmaster is through your stories. But then at the same time, we kind of want to pick at what's up with all the bullshit grandmasters. You know what I mean? Because I think that's where a lot of people who aren't in the martial arts are going to get confused. They're going to come in. They're going to come into a school. They're going to meet some guy who's, you know, a 27th degree grandmaster. They don't even understand that that's fictitious. And they're going to kneel at his feet and be, oh my God, and pay him $200 a month. Right. And so therein lies a problem. There's a fraudulent problem. And so two guys like you.
There's a lot of that out there.
Yeah, you can speak to it.
We're not able to stop it. I think it's a societal problem. In the world we're living in, people are attention seeking only.
Right.
So if that's your main objective to whatever your life is, boy, that's really bad.
Well, you manifest things either in positive ways or in negative ways, right? So you two gentlemen could be considered producers. You produce things. What Ron is talking about are consumers, people that consume things, right? So a title to them doesn't produce anything. They consume it. They consume the notoriety that comes with the title. That's why they chase it. You guys, on the other hand, are producers. You produce with acts of service. That's why you say humble things like, I don't even know what do you mean? I'm not a master. I'm just interested in training and teaching people things. Yeah, because you're a producer. So when you say it's out of hand, it could be considered this. When you define something, you clarify what it is. Sure, AIDS got out of hand, but we defined it and clarified what it was and how you can catch it. So this is what we're doing. Having this conversation is you two gentlemen saying, well, this is what it is. This is how you attain it the right way. And this is gonorrhea.
Yes.
Right? That's gonorrhea. Look, that guy's going to make you itch. Get the hell away from him. You know, so it's beautiful. I think it's a great conversation to have. You said you weren't prepared to be named a master, but you were a 9th degree black belt in, what is it again? Aikijitsu, which from what I understand is a fusion art, right? That involves
Aikido and Jiu-Jitsu.
Woo, good fun. Good fun. What were the weapons? Just out of the top of my head, what was the weapons that you guys would train with?
Sai, sword, nunchaku, bow, yawara, some of the Chinese weapons, 7-link chain, 9-link chains, tongfa,
everything.
Sword, spear.
Just everything. Okay, put this in your hand and go at it. Okay, yeah. Nice. That sounds like a fun art. Aikijitsu is a fusion art that apparently has every weapons style within it, and that's great. That's why I got involved with Kung Fu, because Kung Fu is like a big buffet, right? You're not really trapped into stuff. So that was why I started training with Al, because he gave such a variety of things. So what is your master? Who was your first master? How old were you when you became a master? Your master's master. We're halfway through. Your master's master, Al. Your master, okay. In the Kaji Kembo lineage that you're in now, we'll speak to that line, right? So your first master was Siddha Sunshin, or was it Emperado?
Are we talking about the Kaji Kembo art?
Yes, yeah, I'm talking about that line.
That would be Siddha Sunshin.
He was your first guy.
You're
okay, right. So the question then would be your master's master. So I guess this part of the conversation is, tell us a little bit about Adriano Emperado.
Okay, Adriano Emperado is one of the co-founders of Kaji Kembo. There were actually 5 individuals that put that art together, but the other 4, kind of drifted and did their own thing. and went into different areas. And Emperado was the one that really kept the word Kajukenbo together into the late 60s and 70s and so forth. So this is why you have a lot of the guys that really started under Emperado actually did so by way of the other instructors who drifted out of Kajukenbo and came back. It's hard to explain that to me because there's a lot of Kajukenbo instructors during the 60s that went on their own, and when they went on their own, some of their students wanted to go back to the original founder. So it was like me, going back to the original founder of Kajukenbo, which was Emperado. And Emperado's instructor, he was William Chow. So and that's pretty much where we stuck to it. So that's that on that lineage. And that was just on the Kajukenbo, pretty much the Kempo Karate section.
Adriano Emperado, local guy here from Hawaii. I'm gonna say Filipino. Was he a mix like everybody else here, or was he pure-blooded?
No, he was Filipino. Yeah.
It's hard to say sometimes because Hawaii is a state where there's a lot of Heinz 57 kind mixes. And you'll see a Chinese Filipino and be like, oh, you pull more Filipino than I don't see the Chinese. So it's always smart to ask, what do you pull? For example, we know an actor, Saxton, and he's Japanese. He looks 100% Japanese, but he's Japanese Hawaiian. And he went to Kamehameha schools, right? You can't get into Kamehameha schools if you don't have Hawaiian blood quantum, and you wouldn't even know it. Right. And so the first time I heard him say, yeah, I went to Kamehameha, I was like, what? Triple take. You got Hawaiian in you because you pull nothing Hawaiian. I have a daughter. My middle daughter looks totally haole. She looks Caucasian, but my wife is Hawaiian. Right. So she doesn't, Madison doesn't pull Hawaiian at all. Right. My other kids, you can see it in them like, oh, yeah, look at this half Hawaiian kid, but not Madison. Right. So it's in Hawaii. You gotta ask that question. 100%? 200%? What is it? Right? So today's episode is halfway through. We are halfway through. How you feeling, guys?
Perfect.
You good? You good?
Great.
Okay. All right, we're halfway through the questions. Your master's master. We're going to go over to Ron Van Cleef. You've talked about your master, Peter Urban. I did it. I said it right. Peter Urban.
My first master was Master Moses Powell.
Moses Powell.
He taught me the art of Sanukas Jiu-Jitsu. His teacher was Florendo Visitacion, a Filipino master of martial arts. He taught Jiu-Jitsu and Arnis, Eskrima, and Jiu-Jitsu. So that's where my lineage comes from Professor V, through Moses Powell, and from Moses Powell, who introduced me to Peter Urban, then I got the Yamaguchi influence, the Gojin Yamaguchi influence, the Richard Kim influence, and Sensei Urban was he was a linguist. He was an intelligence agent in the Navy. He listened to the Japanese propaganda stuff and he translated. So he was a code breaker. So he was a very detailed man. He wrote a book which is still the gold classic of martial arts book. It's called The Karate Dojo by Peter Urban. He wrote that in 1960, 61.
The Karate Dojo by Peter Urban in 1961. You got to check that book out, everybody.
A classic, which gave an overview of not just Goju, but of all the major styles of martial arts. This was the first book that I had ever read that covered different forms of martial arts. Normally, each book covers only their specific style, but he gave a really dense overview of martial arts. It was quite fantastic.
You know, okay. You can find, this is another trend. That's why these
And he
conversations.
was a Russian Greek.
He was a Greek Russian, or how did he say? Did he say I was a Russian Greek?
Russian Greek.
Russian first. Russian Greek. All right. The trend that I've noticed that you guys have brought up is that everybody has this compendium of knowledge that they build. So the masters that you've known were like Renaissance men. And that's something you want to distinguish because those are incredibly fun points of interest, right? There was a time, my God, 10, 15 years ago, where Al and I went separate ways. He was married, had his life going on. The school in Makaha was struggling like schools do. And I did the exact same thing. To revitalize the school, I went in and I wrote a compendium, an opus of everything I knew, you know what I mean? And went through, and it looked like that. It looked like a book of the 27 different things, of the stuff I learned in the military, of the things I learned from Al, all this other stuff, things that I was doing on my own. But what I've noticed is that people that do that codify the martial arts, it sticks with them and they don't lose it. I have met a dozen grandmasters that when I ask them, where's your system? You know, it's not codified. It's not written down. Nowhere. And when you don't write and codify your genius and your discovery and your creativity, it doesn't exist. It leaves. And it frightens the shit out of me because you've got men like yourselves that have been in the martial arts for 60 years and they have yet to write down what they have mastered. If, I don't want to sound rude, if you've mastered it, it should just pour right out of your head like vomit. You should be able to just vomit it all out, right? So that's one of the great things. I noticed that Al did this when he was a young martial artist. He wrote his red book. Yeah, he codified his system. And so when you walk into an Al DeCosco school, you have to buy a book, right? There's a book, and the book is a system. And within the book is all the things you should be learning, and you cross off as you learn them from the guy who's teaching. Sounds like your guys in your lineage did the exact same thing. Not only did they do the exact same thing, they promoted you to do so yourself. They wanted perpetuity. They wanted you to continue on their legacy, not only through what they taught you, but what you learned, so that can become a thing. I also want to point out one more thing. Both styles that you come from, Al and Ron, are fusion styles. They're hybrid styles, which tells us that that's a mindset. And maybe that's one of the popular things within a master's mindset, is the ability to pivot and see change and experience and anticipate change, and then do what? Develop a system that deals with it. That right there is the essence of martial arts. Find the threat, study and assess the threat, write down how to deal with the threat, right? And so you can right now, if you've never known a martial arts master, or let's say you are one, or you cruise with them, pay attention to these trends that these gentlemen keep on bringing up. Humility, right? A thirst for the variety of life, a thirst for education, a humble thirst for education. Oh my God, you know what that's called? That's called a stewardship. When you steward things, it's a humble understanding, or you're seeking to make something better. You're stewarding. So, wow, it looks like, well, you guys are masters. We haven't stumbled upon crap. What we have done is we have defined something. When we want to know what is a master is somebody who's humble enough to steward the educational progression of that knowledge, right? So I want to tip my hat. I'm not wearing a hat, but I want to tip my hat to you two gentlemen. Thank you very much for that. Your master's master. You know, here's another thing, just real quick. This is for Ron. When you talk to Al about his martial arts past, Cali Eskrima Arnis. Those Filipino fighting arts were happening around him every day. He talks about like, oh, it was just a thing. You know what I mean? Like somebody walking home from the market. Dude's out there with a stick, whacking away at stuff. You, however, it's Brooklyn, right? Brooklyn, New York? Okay, I've been to Brooklyn, New York. Brooklyn, New York is not, the cane fields of Hawaii, right? So you're learning this fusion style. You've got, Cali and knife fighting going on. How was that received in your neighborhood? Were you fortunate because it was the martial arts revolution?
Everyone
everybody
thought I was crazy when I was a teenager. Van Cleef, he's karate crazy.
Were you running around just like a ninja in New York?
No.
You weren't a Spider-Man? You weren't the Black Dragon yet. You weren't a superhero yet.
My brother and I used to get on the train and sneak into movie theaters in Chinatown and watch the Kung Fu movies when I was 12.
You snuck into Kung Fu movies in Chinatown when you were 12. Right? This is like in the 60s when you got caught doing stuff like that. There was legit. We're in the 50s. Even worse, there was legitimate consequences for sneaking into a movie, even though it was like, what, 75 cents, $2.
25 cents.
Fucking 25 cents. You know how much you pay for a movie ticket today?
With popcorn.
With popcorn. With popcorn and a back rub for 35 cents. You get a back rub and a fucking towel. Shit. 25 cents. You can't. If you have a family of 4 today, going to the movies is $120.
It's more than if they eat anything.
Yeah, right? If they eat stuff. My God, 25 cents. Everybody listen to that. 25 cents. And you, just to put this out there, you snuck in. Anyway, yeah, fuck that quarter. I'm sneaking in to watch this Kung Fu movie. Amazing. And so what was that process? Walk us through sneaking into a Chinatown theater. What did you have to do to pull that off?
There were several movie theaters in Chinatown.
Oh, we had a whole route.
What we would do, we would wait by the exit door. And as people came out, we'd walk backwards in. My brother and I.
You had to walk backwards in like footsteps in the snow. If I walk this certain way, they won't know which way I'm coming. So it was an optical illusion. Just two little kids in the back of their heads backing through.
And we were the only non-Chinese kids in the theater.
That is awesome. No one's going to see. No one's going to notice this. Did you ever get caught?
Once.
Once you got caught. What did you say?
They threw me out.
Get the hell out of here. You? Did they catch you in mid moonwalk? When you were moonwalking into the place?
No, I had already sat down and got some popcorn.
I think the only time I ever did that is I just didn't leave. And there was another different movie playing after the movie I just watched, and I just sat there and acted like, yes, I'm here super early. Ha ha ha, nobody ever caught me.
My brother and I would go in and watch 3 movies in a row.
Yeah, that's crazy. I had friends like that.
And then sneak on the train to go back to Brooklyn.
And there was like legitimate dressed train officers back then, right? Yeah. People that were fancy, all with their fancy fucking outfits, punching your ticket and stuff. Were they armed? They weren't armed.
No.
Did they have a stick on them? A billy club? No.
The police did.
Yeah, because you shot a dude. You told us that story. You were a subway transit officer. Yeah. The guy cut you with a straight razor and you shot him in the shoulder, which I might add, you should have shot him in the ass, but we discussed that already. So your master's master, you're in Brooklyn, you're kung fu crazy, you're getting ready for the Marines. Okay, last question before we cut this short and we'll pick up on another episode. Both of you gentlemen need to answer this question because people want to know. Al, you're going to go first. What martial arts technique have, in your opinion, and I know you're going to know I've never mastered anything, what technique have you mastered? What is your go-to signature technique? If somebody were to go, oh yeah, I've watched Al DeCosco's fight, shit, he comes in with this, that technique. What technique is your go-to signature technique?
That would be a vertical returning back fist.
The back fist. I thought it was going to be some kind of cool curl kick that you used to display.
No. The vertical returning back fist was always a lead or a fake.
Right.
It could go into different ways, because that one there, I want to make that my signature so that people see and watch this, but it wasn't the real one. I would either come inside using that as the lead to draw the attention up, then I would strike low using the side kick or roundhouse kick to the groin or things, something like that, to follow up with a left vertical punch or things that way. I wanted to bring up something while you were talking about that.
Of course.
Because I think Ron would agree to this too. During the time that we were coming up, in the 60s, 70s, you didn't hear too much about what a grandmaster or master. I think that was what was more profound was you was hearing like a lot of professors, like Professor V, Professor Waller J, Professor Emperor, Professor Chow. That was a title, because when we grew up, it was like you was an assistant instructor, then you became an instructor, head instructor, then chief instructor, then professor, then master, then grandmaster, then senior grandmaster, then great grandmaster, and so forth out the line. Now we're in the phase of period of time in this decade. I think you'll hear more people talking about senior grandmasters and great grandmasters than you do professors. Professors were like a time period. There was that back in the 1960s or early 1970s, and not because you got so many professors, 100,000 professors now say, well, we got to get above that in there. So let's go ahead and make a master. And now we got so many masters coming up. Oh yeah, now you know what? We better make ourselves a grandmaster. Oh, now we got so many grandmasters. Now we have seen, man, I just see it elevated. So now that we're into the phase of great grandmasters, I wonder what's it going to be 20 years from now. Is it going to supreme great grandmasters?
You know what? Maybe they'll just
around to see that, Al.
Maybe they'll just switch it up.
Yeah,
it'll be something totally different. It'll be a new name, and they'll start. Okay, here's a really good example. I'm Gen X. Then you have the millennials. Then you have Gen Z. Guess what is after Gen Z? Gen Alpha. They just started over again.
Yeah,
it's like the hurricanes. It's like tropical storms. So we've gone through the alphabet. Now the new generation is Generation Alpha. So maybe that's what will happen to the martial arts after we've all become the grand poobah unicorn triple crown king of the world. It'll just go right back. People will get so fucking sick of it. Just say, shut the fuck up. You're either a teacher and a student. And we'll go back to what Ron was alluding to earlier. He's like, I would just like to graduate and be called a coach.
That's right.
You know what I mean? Maybe that's where you guys can head. Maybe you can start just dismissing people. No, I'm not a grandmaster anymore. I'm just a coach. All right, just call me coach.
That would be appropriate.
It would be appropriate, right? It's when you were talking about how the professorship came in around the 60s and 70s, could you attribute that to the rise of colleges and universities at the time? People wanted to be a college professor. Right? Because I think one of the stories, correct me if I'm wrong, Professor Chow also taught at the college. And that's why he was called Professor Chow, because he was actually a professor, not a professor in the martial arts, but he was a professor. Do you think that's where maybe things started? Is that, this guy, the professor, now I need the hat and the gown and all that. Could you see that happening in the 60s? Or do you think it's just a phenomenon?
I would say a phenomenon, because even in China too, there was like professor, and so forth, and even sometimes like in some of the Japanese art they would call them professors also.
Oh, so it predates that.
So when I kind of take a look at that, I said, whoa, how did we get to be masters and grandmasters? So you take a look. I'll just go back again. Assistant instructor, head instructor, chief instructor, professor, master, the grandmaster, senior grandmaster, great grandmaster, and
supreme
whatever.
Grandmaster.
Yeah, supreme grandmaster.
It sounds like a pizza.
Yeah,
But
it's like
I heard that you had to be dead to be a supreme grandmaster.
yeah,
Is
or
that
spiritual
true?
grandmaster now, right?
You have to
Isn't
have
that
extra
true?
sausage if you're a supreme grandmaster. That's how that goes.
But
Yeah.
isn't that true that you have to be dead to be a supreme grandmaster?
Supreme, I think they should turn that to spiritual grandmaster.
Right? He's
Okay.
ghosted. The grandmaster has left the building.
Yeah, so it's interesting. Yeah.
I think you travel back and just say it's all about humility, right? As we
Yep.
define what a master is, which is what episode 3 is all about. I think we've landed on a good spot. In this conversation,
good.
I think we've landed on a good spot. In order to be a master, you need to be humble. You need to be of service. You need to not want to chase the title, which throughout history, I think some of our greatest leaders are the ones that don't want the title, right? And so it looks like it holds true for martial arts and the grandmasters and super supreme nipple cream, grandmasters that we see today. If you're narcissistic and it's all about you, then we can tell because your name and your title is longer than anything, and if you are
I felt a little ashamed when Sensei Urban promoted me to ninth dan and created that grandmaster title for me. I felt very, very unworthy.
that's not actually shame. That's actually a really cool virtue that you have. It's called humility. The tinge of humility and the tinge of shame are very similar, right? Right? They're kind of seated in a similar kind of situation. When you are shameful, you don't feel you're worthy. And when you're humble, you also don't feel you're worthy, but you're just giving it up for the right reason. Humility allows you to give somebody else the spotlight. Humility allows you to see the greatness in others before the greatness in yourself. So shame, I don't think, is the appropriate definition, my friend. I think you were just being humble and saying, "Oh my God, thank you very much." Like the love of a good woman or a friend, you're humbled by it, right?
Mhm.
So I think you're just
It
humbled
was
by
scary.
it. Yeah. I think congratulations, you've proven to be a good master. In my humble opinion, both of you gentlemen have done great deeds for other people, right? And that's how you promote and you produce things of worth, right? So, any last words before we end episode 3? I do want to do some teasers, okay?
Learning never stops, guys.
Just so everybody knows, next episode, we're talking about Bruce Lee. It's going to be Bruce Lee and Richard Pryor, but to be honest, I don't think we can cover both guys in one show. So we're going to start with Bruce Lee. So I'm going to put this out here as a teaser for next week's episode. Raise your hand if you've met Bruce Lee. Okay, and Al, did you hear that? Have you met Bruce Lee?
Smoke.
Yeah, of course.
Yes, of course. Of course, you both met Bruce Lee. All right, so next episode, we're going to be talking about when did you meet Bruce Lee? How did you meet Bruce Lee? Did you ever cruise with Bruce Lee? I'm assuming both you did because I know you better than the people listening. So we're going to talk about those experiences. Okay, so Ron, top of your head, give me a 30-second Bruce Lee story.
I met Bruce Lee at Henry Cho's tournament in 1966-67 in New York City. That's when he gave me the name the Black Dragon. I had lost a match to a really great competitor who has passed away now, but his name was Joe Hayes. He was spectacular. I mean, spectacular.
I remember him.
I lost to him, and Bruce said, "You're the Black Dragon." I said, "I just lost." He says, "You're the Black Dragon."
Bruce Lee.
But of course, we had smoked some weed in the hotel, so I guess
Bruce
I
Lee.
went back in.
You got your world famous name from Bruce Lee himself.
But we were both stoned at the time, so you know.
What a cool story though, because you know what? That's been your thing. You're the Black Dragon. So the birth
Really
of the
nice
Black
guy,
Dragon. I'm
Really
sorry.
nice guy. Really nice guy.
So the birth of the Black Dragon happened after smoking a joint with Bruce Lee and competing.
Hilton Hotel in New York City.
There you go. Who would have known? Who would have known? That's how it happened. Okay, so that is perfect. Thank you so much for that. What a great piece of history. Al, you're up next. Your Bruce Lee story, a 30-second Bruce Lee story. What do you got?
Oh, the rumors that were going around in Oakland, California, that I have beat the took Bruce Lee off his horse. That was just a rumor that came into a confrontation where I actually ended up approaching Bruce Lee at the International Karate Championship after my competition, and we sat and talked about it. Rumors are going around about us two fighting. That never happened. It was only students of his students and my students talking about who could beat each other. Oh, my instructor is better than your instructor, and it just ballooned into a fight. That never happened. So to stop that, I approached Bruce Lee and tell him, hey, I just want to come up to you and let you know about what's going on. He said, yeah, I know all about that. He says, no, it's instructors don't make trouble for themselves. It's the students that do.
Yeah, there's a interesting sidestep story to that. After Bruce Lee died, you were approached to play Bruce Lee in a Bruce Lee movie, and you got to drive his Porsche around. Was it a Porsche? What was it that he had?
No. He had a red Mercedes, convertible Mercedes, which was a right-hand driver. Not the left hand. Because he brought it. The wife brought it back from Hong Kong.
Oh wow.
So, yeah, it was nice.
Okay, all right. So we're gonna get deeper into this, gentlemen. Next week's episode 4, we're going to start off with Bruce Lee. So get all your Bruce Lee stories ready. All the details, everything you can think of. We're going to get into it. We're going to have some fun. I'm surprised you're smoking joints with Bruce Lee, right? I didn't even, that's an interesting conversation, right? I want to get more into that. What's Bruce Lee like? Huh?
Very philosophical after a toke.
Oh, I imagine. Those are the best kind of guys when they get, I can't even fucking say the word. You say it for me. He got what?
Philosophical.
Philosophical. There we go. Thank you. I needed help on that. That sounds like a great time. I would love to sit down and smoke a joint with Bruce Lee. I got all kinds of questions, but you get to answer some of them for me. So next week, everybody, Bruce Lee. We're going to be talking about Bruce Lee with the Black Dragon himself. We're going to be talking about Bruce Lee with Senior Grandmaster Al Dacascos. Stay tuned, stay alive, and join us next time. This is
John.
Oh, mahalo! Caught me right in the middle of the skip out of the play out. Anyway, we can do that later. Everybody, I want to thank you for joining us today. This has actually been a great conversation. It's exactly what we wanted it to be. A RoundHouse conversation talking about all kinds of weird and wacky fun stuff. I learned a lot today. I want to say thank you. Right?
Yeah, you're welcome.
Right?
You're welcome.
I think the people that are listening are going to learn a lot today. And to be honest, you don't know what anything is until you define it. And you can't define it by yourself. You have to have conversations with other people, right? Because we coexist. So thank you so much. I'm going to take this mastery with me. I'm going to take this knowledge with me, and I'm going to share it to others. Show them this is what a grandmaster looks like. This is what you want to do. Yes, thank you. So, everybody, recap. Episode 4 next week. Bruce Lee, and if we have time, I don't know, Richard Pryor. I kind of want to do a whole episode on Richard Pryor.
We can do Richard Pryor, Eddie Murphy, George Benson. We can do.
Yeah, we got some stuff to talk about, everybody. There's a long line.
I even claim Steve Reeves.
Steve Reeves.
The guy that played Richards.
Oh, hey, the old one.
Yes, I met him. He was in his 80s.
All right, everybody.
Wow.
I rehabbed his shoulder when he had a shoulder replacement. Shoulder rehab.
Yikes.
For his shoulder replacement. What a nice man. What a nice man.
You know, these are the stories that people need to hear, because nobody's talking about stuff from, not even 30 years ago. You can't get anybody younger than me to talk about anything prior to 2000, right? And there is a lot of live history that's still around today. And you want to hear these stories. The reason why you want to hear these stories is because they're exactly the same as what's going on today. Right? So we learn that we don't learn shit, that all we know is we know nothing at all. And the only way we can dodge repeating history, to dodge that groin strike of history, is by talking to the guys who've dodged the groin strikes before us. On the way out,
Thank you, Sean.
I want to say thank you, everybody, for listening. This is RoundHouse. Please be here for next week. It's only a week away.
Ron and Al and Sean.
All right, guys. Aloha.
All right, take care.
Thank you very much for joining
Thank
us today. This is RoundHouse, featuring Grandmaster Al DeCoscos and Grandmaster Ron Van Cliff. Talking about the things that Grandmasters just don't want to talk about and giving you a seat at the table. This is your host, Sean Harflinger, and we will see you every Friday, every week. RoundHouse. Take the hit. And now a word from our sponsors. Funky Puppy Productions. If you need a production done, Funky Puppy Productions can do it for you. Visit us at funkypuppyproductions.com. Caring for Mothers. MalamaYourMama.com. Malama Your Mama is an organization that is all about caring for mothers. To malama is to care. And one of the greatest gifts that we can give our mothers and new mothers is that support system that they so desperately need. Together, we can teach the world to malama our mamas, just like our mamas have malamaed us. We want to dedicate this organization and its proceeds to all the strong mothers out there that have honored us. We want to steward healthy mothers and to raise mothers up. Together, we can malama our mamas. Caring for mothers. Help us by visiting malamayourmama.com and supporting our cause. Mahalo. And if you're interested in looking for more great content from our creators, please check out our other podcast, Beyond Kicking and Punching with Al DeCoscos, and Midlife Virus with Sean Harflinger. Both podcasts can be found on Apple Podcast or where great podcasts can be found. Beyond Kicking and Punching and Midlife Virus. Find great podcasts when you want to listen to great content. Once again, this is RoundHouse, and we want to thank you for joining us today as we talked about anything and everything the martial arts has to offer. Be sure to tune in next week and join us around the table. RoundHouse. Take the hit.